Hello, everybody, and thanks for checking us out at Hey Man, It's Okay. I'm one of your hosts, Sky Bridges.
I'm your other host, Ryan Heapy. I'm a licensed therapist out of Newport Beach, California.
And today we have a very special guest to talk about somatic therapy. She's a host of a podcast called the Anxiety Recovery Podcast. We have Valerie Rubin. Welcome, Valerie.
Hello. Thank you so much, Sky and Ryan, for having me on. I'm so grateful to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. I know, this has been something in the works for a little while. I know we just kind of randomly connected on social media, and then I started following you and seeing how cool your message was, and wanted to invite you here on the podcast with us.
Thank you so much. I know it's so amazing, and I'm so grateful that you guys are having me on. I'm just so excited.
So while we get going here, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, about kind of how you got into this journey of somatic therapy and helping people with their anxiety and, all that stuff for our listeners to get to know you a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. So I myself am no stranger to anxiety. I suffered through anxiety through my entire childhood, and it started really affecting my health. I talk really in depth about, my story on my Instagram, but I really just was in the trenches with anxiety, and it kind of led me down to a path of having chronic pain. I had that for 6 years. And then once I, really worked through and reduced my anxiety levels, the chronic pain completely went away. And, because I started with hypnotherapy, and that's really what totally changed my life. And then from there, I continued to do trainings and certifications and, really building my knowledge base on working with the body and, really getting to the root cause of anxiety and mental health struggles, because it's something so common that so many people struggle with. And I'm just really excited to be here, and I'm happy to kind of break down the stigma of mental health and anxiety, especially with men, and because it's something that's so freaking important. Your mental health impacts every area of your life. I'm also, a host of the Anxiety Recovery Podcast, like you said, and then I own, my own hypnotherapy and, coaching business to help people, with mental health struggles.
Valerie, I know there's like a clinical term for anxiety, but I think so many of us have sort of a different definition, or at least it affects us all maybe differently, or what. So I guess I'm curious kind of what anxiety is to you, and I don't know how it affected you and maybe how you would define it.
Yeah, excellent question. Yeah, I think so many people, right? So many people have so many different definitions or workings of anxiety. So for me, I think really anxiety is something that if you experience a lot of overthinking, negative self talk, a lot of negative thoughts, your mind is racing, just a lot of worrying and overthinking, that it feels like there's more worries and there's more bad days than good, and just a lot of stress and overwhelm, and it feels like it's too much for you to handle. That's when anxiety is really taking over your life and impacting your ability to cope. That's when I would say, getting one-on-one support or support from a licensed counselor or coach or something like that, that's really, really powerful. And yeah, more about my struggles for me is, I had, the clinical term of generalized anxiety disorder. So I personally would just worry all the time, and that was just my baseline. And, people in my family worried all the time as well. And especially it can become so familiar until this is really impacting my life in negative ways. For me, it was stopping me from going after my dreams and, starting my business, because I was just so plagued with fear around even the idea of that.
Yeah, yeah. How long do you think you were suffering with, from anxiety, and what do you think it was that finally catapulted you to either get help or start to learn some of the techniques that help as well?
Absolutely. Great question. So for me, I struggled with it for, my whole childhood. And then I really started to make way with the anxiety when I was around 21. So when I was around 18, I started to see, a talk therapist and things like that. And that was really helping. But I felt like there were still so many worries that were really impacting, my mental health. And then it started impacting my physical health, just with all these chronic pains and things like that. So really what catapulted me forward was hypnotherapy. I found that really helped me get to a deeper layer that I that I was struggling to get to with a talk therapist for me. So that's really what catapulted me forward. And then I found a, hypnotherapist, and who specialized in anxiety, and that completely transformed my life. And then I started to learn more about the body and how anxiety really impacts the body. And so I learned a lot of somatic tools like somatic parts work, really learned about the nervous system and nervous system regulation, as well as I'm certified in something called brain spotting. It's really similar to EMDR. Basically, we have trauma that's stored in our brainstem, which is our subcortical brain, meaning it's just really deep in there. It's really tucked away deep in our brain. And so brain spotting helps us activate that and, heal and work through some of that trauma that we might not consciously be aware is affecting us.
Interesting. So there's a word that you keep using that I would like to clarify for everybody. Could you tell us what somatic therapy is?
Yes, amazing question. So somatic therapy, basically the definition of somatic just means body. So we're working with the body. So just as an example, we'll use anxiety, for example. So when I'm, utilizing somatic tools, I first ask clients, if a client's coming to me with anxiety, okay, where are you feeling that in your body, locating that in your body? What thoughts are coming up as a result of this feeling that you're feeling in your body? What are some sensations? And then what are some emotions with that anxiety? Basically, we all have emotions. All of us have emotions. It's part of the human experience. And so somatic therapy, helps to unlock some of those emotions that get stuck, especially if we have parents who didn't welcome our emotional experience, or people who called us, too emotional or too dramatic or things like that. That anxiety and that emotion doesn't go anywhere. It then gets stuck in our body because especially if we're as a child, our authentic expression, our emotional experience isn't welcome. So emotions can get stuck and they can lead to resistance and anxiety and depression and that sort of thing. And so somatic therapy helps for us to work through those emotions that have been stuck in the body.
Can you describe kind of what it's like to go through somatic therapy, basically, as a client and also as a practitioner?
Yes, great question. So why don't I start with brain spotting? I can show you like my brain spotting tool. So this is literally what I utilize. So basically, for example, so say a client is coming to me about a fear around driving, right? They have panic attacks when they're driving. So I'm going to put this down for a second. So
What is that, by the way?
it's what I use in brain spotting, and I'll explain that in just a second, like how.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Is it
It
like
looks
a
like an
wand?
antenna.
Or
Like,
yeah.
it looks like one. It's really silly. It looks really silly. With kids, you're supposed to look at this pointer part. But for kids, some of them like to have like butterflies or sunflowers on them to like. And I'll explain that in a second. But let's just say you come to me and you're a client struggling with a fear of driving. Maybe you have panic attacks, on the highway. So I first have them identify, on a scale of 0 to 10, 0, this anxiety doesn't affect your driving at all. 10 to I'm having complete panic attacks. I feel out of control when I'm on the highway. And then I help them identify, okay, where is this anxiety? Where is this panic in your body? Okay. Notice, okay, it's in my chest. Okay. So I'm feeling this anxiety in my chest, and then have them, label what sensations is your heart beating really fast? Does your chest feel really tight? Do your shoulders feel like they're caving in? Is your neck really tight? And describing those sensations of that anxiety. Is there a knot in your stomach? And now here's where the pointer comes in. So we start with the pointer, and then I have them basically with the pointer, I'll show you. So first, I'll go slowly like this. I'll go much slower in the session. So for those who are listening, I'm just moving a pointer across the field of the webcam. And so what that does is it helps the brain. You will feel those sensations of anxiety become more activated or more intense when my pointer is at a certain point, and that's triggering that trauma that's stored in their brainstem.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of what the brain spotting is like. And so I'll have them stay and look at this point for around, if they're a new client, I'll start with 20 minutes. And then if they feel that they can handle it and they want to go more, I'll do 45 minutes to an hour max. And I've really been having amazing results with clients with fears, especially CPTSD and feelings of depression. So that's kind of how brain spotting works. And before I explain the other ones, like, do you have any questions on that?
Yeah, I do.
Me too.
So just to, I get this right. You're moving this wand or antenna at very slow rates, and then we're stopping with our eyes and noticing when the anxiety is coming up worse than others.
Yes, you got it.
And then what are you doing in between? Are you talking to us? Am I just noticing it come up? Are there like sets? I know you said it can go anywhere from 20 to 60 minutes. And so I guess maybe what's going on with me as the patient or client as I'm watching this, and how that stems from, gives you relief.
Absolutely. So basically, I'm going to bring my pointer up again. So I'm going to go, so say I go really slow, they'll tell me, oh, I feel it more there. Okay. And as I'm moving it, I make sure, because I want to give them the space to, really see, okay, where am I feeling more activated or anxious? So I'm moving the pointer, and as I'm moving it, I'm not saying anything, but they'll pause me and stop. Okay. Yeah. It feels really activated here. I feel it here. I feel it here. Some people, they'll just start crying once I hit a certain spot. Some people, it's also it's a model where the therapist and client is very attuned to the other, or a practitioner and client are very attuned. So it's also building that relationship beforehand. And so when you're really attuned, I can see, oh, they're blinking a ton. That's like a sign that it hit a spot in their brain that they're feeling more activated. Crying, if they have like a big sigh. So that's like one way I utilize it. And then once we get to that spot, typically some clients are more inward processors. Maybe they don't speak as much in talk therapy sessions. And some people like to outwardly process. They process a lot, verbally and with talking. And some like to talk about what's coming up. So say we're at a point and they're really activated, they might come up with like memories that they forgot about, different traumatic things that have happened or scenes come up when they're sitting in that activation. And so once we get to that activation point, that where their anxiety, for example, is more heightened, we pause there. And then for 20 minutes to start out, I'll a lot of the time I'll be either reflecting what they're saying, okay, what are you noticing here? What are you noticing in your body? But they'll usually end up telling me, oh, this came up, and it's really just validating those experiences and letting those experiences come through. But that's how that like kind of works. And there's also bilateral music. It's similar to EMDR a little bit. So some people who give EMDR sessions, they have bilateral like music, and it stimulates the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere of the brain. And so that can really help people with ADHD or autism to really just go inward and connect deeper, and just people in general. I mean, I love music, so it's very healing to experience, both as the client and practitioner.
I'm trained in EMDR, and so I'm very familiar, with the bilateral stimulation, and and kind of what you were talking about earlier with the sort of the body keeps the score of how we really hold these things, deep in, and sometimes I think there's a theory about how with EMDR we hold them almost in maybe the wrong part of the brain, and then doing some of this work, especially since the eyes are part of the brain. It's the only part of our brain that's exposed. And so I can see how this, could possibly make a difference once you hit those little spots, maybe as the eyes are connecting maybe to parts of the brain in the back. Oh.
Absolutely.
So my question is the idea seems like it's to sit in that feeling so that you can figure out why you're feeling that way.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Yes, pretty much. And some things, a lot of the time, just like with EMDR, right, or deeper forms of trauma therapy or healing, things can come up that you're not even aware of. Like, whoa, this driving anxiety, I had no idea it was because, maybe I almost drowned when I was 4 years old. That could be connected. You could have that same feeling, right? And so that's just an example. But yeah, pretty much. Yes.
Okay, cool. So
Yes.
yeah, that's all my questions. So you can move on if you want. We've asked our questions.
Amazing. Yeah.
How many sessions do you feel like it takes to get some healing?
Good question.
You can do, so I like to explain it this way. So clients, and I'm sure, Ryan, you understand this as well. Some clients, they experience results instantaneously, cumulatively, meaning, over time, or retroactively, meaning, say they had a very big trigger at work or with their partner, and then we work on that. And then they don't even realize that that trigger has been worked through, or they're not experiencing that trigger again and then it's a few months and they're like, wow, I'm not even realizing this trigger with my partner isn't there anymore, and wow, I'm just now seeing it. So, but yes, clients can get results instantaneously, cumulatively, or retroactively, and it can take. It depends, like, on what they want to work on, especially like a fear that can be done in 1 to 3 sessions. But depending on how much trauma you've accumulated, you might want to do weekly brain spotting sessions if that feels good for you, or every other week, because it is like a deeper form of therapy, and it's it's a lot of the time it's more suitable potentially to try talk therapy, of course, first, really starting with those building blocks. But yeah, it's really, really freaking powerful, and I love administering it.
Awesome.
It's, being a EMDR practitioner, when I got my training, I was still a little hesitant on whether it would work or not. And so I went and sought out my own EMDR therapy. And I found a therapist and I've at this point had probably had 15 to 20 therapists over the years. And this therapist, there was hardly anything we could relate to. She was, a very different demographic. I didn't see me getting anything out of the work that we were going to do. And yet the EMDR therapy that I did was probably some of the most profound work. And you really didn't almost need I felt like there was a bit of like an inner healer sort of through it all, which, I've seen as I've done EMDR for clients, that something clicks, and, it can be 1 session, it can be 3 sessions. I'm never really sure kind of when the, epiphany or when the big transformation is going to happen, but it does, and sometimes it comes out of nowhere. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's so beautiful. And yeah, it is like you're really resourcing your own inner healer, as you would say, especially with EMDR. And that's beautiful, right? And that's just so beautiful because it's really similar to brain spotting. Even like in the training, you're required to receive brain spotting sessions yourself, like, on yourself from other colleagues and things. And, like I wouldn't even need to know these people or connect to some of these people. And it's like instant. For me, it felt like instant healing. I got so much, aha moments and things like that. And it's really, really, really such a beautiful modality, EMDR, brain spotting, and it's just amazing to support clients in a deep way.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it's something I really want to look into and maybe add to the EMDR repertoire. Yeah.
Yes, I can't recommend it enough. I adore it. I adore it so much.
So you talked about brain spotting,
Yes.
and then the other 2 big ones that you've talked about, the one that I'm most fascinated with is hypnotherapy. But which one do you want to go to next, out of hypno or somatic?
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, why don't we start with hypnotherapy?
Ooh, yeah.
I love hypnotherapy. I feel like that's kind of like my bread and butter as well. I love all of it, but I think hypnotherapy is so beautiful. So basically, kind of similar to brain spotting. And every hypnotherapist is different. This is just my lens of how I was trained. So for me, how I was trained was in hypnotherapy. Let's just use anxiety, for example. So usually I will guide clients between, I guide them to be in a relaxed state. So we have our different states of our brain. Our typical day-to-day life, when we're stressed, we're, in our day-to-day life, we're going about our day, we're in something called a beta brainwave state. And then when we're in hypnosis and guided into this different calm, relaxed state, we are in something called the alpha brainwave state, or the theta brainwave state. The alpha brainwave state, we're in alpha brainwave state when we're listening to music, when we're driving. It really impacts and affects our subconscious mind. So hypnotherapy allows us to access the subconscious mind, where a lot of our triggers and traumas can be stored in our subconscious mind. So going back to these traumas through hypnotherapy will look like showing clients, okay, what is, we're really talking to their subconscious mind. What is the root cause of this anxiety or these feelings that you're not good enough? Your mind is showing us to a scene, a place, event, and time where you didn't feel good enough, where this anxiety first started happening. And then we really find out, what are those core beliefs, what is really causing this anxiety, right? Anxiety can be super multifaceted, but this is just another tool to utilize. And a lot of people's brains will go back to scenes. Some people aren't as visual, so some people it's more thoughts. And when we're from ages 0 to 3 years old, when we experience trauma, we don't have any logical part of our brain. None of it is online yet. So we might go back to just a feeling or big sensation. And that's a sign that we went really deep into, trauma, that maybe we were a baby to 3 years old. I've also had clients go back to scenes in the womb, just a lot of incredible things. Yeah, really, really fascinating stuff. And then, after the, scenes and stuff, I go into inner child healing, really soothing and processing those emotions that typically this younger version of themselves has been going through or gone through, really processing what happened. And then after that, say it's for anxiety or not feeling good enough, or any beliefs that are contributing to the anxiety, I make a whole hypnosis recording on what they needed to hear in the session, and really shifting those neural pathways to feel relaxed again, feel calm again. When typically in hypnosis, clients tell me that their anxiety has been an unconscious protective mechanism to help them feel safe when, maybe in their life or their childhood, they never felt safe. So overthinking and anxiety was a way for them to stay on edge and prepare for that fight.
Wow. That's pretty incredible. The subconscious, it just totally blows my mind, thinking about how as people have figured out how to access that. That's just nuts to me.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think it is just the most epic, cool thing ever.
Can you give us sort of an idea of how it works? I know you kind of gave us sort of like the only time that I've ever done this, when I was 13 years old, and I had a therapist who took me down an elevator, I believe. And as I think I got to the 8th floor, something happened where I got shocked out of it, and that was the end, and that's all I know about. But I remember, going down that elevator, and is that still a thing, or how do you get people sort of into those into that subconscious state?
Absolutely great question. So yes, it is similar in that way of the induction. For me, I like to use the visual of stairs, like imagining you're going down a flight of 10 steps. Okay, and then since I'm more trained with the body and the somatic stuff, I like to kind of connect it to their body. Especially clients are really, a lot of my clients, because I specialize in anxiety, they're usually very tense. Maybe they have headaches, stomach aches, IBS, tension, tension in their neck and their body. Typically, I start with, okay, we're going to go down this 10th, you're going to imagine that you're going off on this 10th stair. Imagine you're moving down on this step. And then as you're doing that, I want you to bring your awareness to your head, bringing this awareness to your head, letting it go, relaxing your head. Any stress, any tension, any pain that's been stored in your head just melts away. We're going to move on to step 9. As you're moving on to step 9, you're imagining your foot is moving on to that next step. And as you're doing that, I want you to imagine that your neck, you're bringing your awareness to your neck, and your neck is loosening. Every muscle, every nerve in your neck is relaxing, loosening. Any tension or stress that's been stored in there releases and lets go. So I kind of do that with each part of the body as I move down each stair or step. Some people also don't like the steps. Some people, maybe stairs are really triggering for them, or they don't like counting or numbers. A lot of my neurodivergent clients, some of them don't like that way. So like numbers, or the counting down of the steps. So some, I just ask, what is your happy place? Where do you feel most relaxed? Sometimes I'll guide clients with, in a forest, or to the beach. Okay, we're on a beach. You're feeling yourself moving in the sand. You're feeling the sand in between your toes. And so really imagining and bringing their senses involved in that. So that's kind of like the guided induction piece to help them really relax and turn their mind off, almost in a sense, to where they're feeling more relaxed. And then I kind of ask, and ask their mind and go in depth of, okay, I'm a great believer that we can't fix what we don't understand. And right now we're going to get to the root cause of, when this anxiety first started. When did you first feel this feeling of overwhelming stress? And so bringing that memory up, and then I usually do a countdown of, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, in a obviously much slower sense. In a much slower sense. And then their mind will usually come up with a feeling, image, sensation, or really strong emotion. And so usually, okay, I'm okay. Are you inside or outside? I'm inside. Are you alone or with someone? I'm with my dad. How old are you about? Really asking these questions to get them more from the scene. If the scene is coming for them, visual. And then they'll explain that to me. I'll really get to what are the core beliefs that you're believing about yourself in this scene. My dad was, not paying attention to me. He went to work, and for me, I was 5 years old. This is just an example. My dad went to work, and I made the belief that I wasn't lovable, and I felt always on edge, wondering when is my dad going to get home? And so this can be an imprint. And so then processing that emotion, where is this in your body, and really processing what was happening. Because what might be traumatic for a 40-year-old, it could be way more traumatic for a 5-year-old, and vice versa. So, our minds make up beliefs about things that we don't understand. And so that can be really damaging, because then the client goes their whole life, oh, I'm not lovable, I'm not enough, I'm not worthy. And then we go about our life living through that 5-year-old lens, and we're frozen in that 5-year-old lens of time. Especially if we didn't have caregivers or parents who supported us emotionally, or didn't help us through those difficult times, or explain to us, daddy's going to work right now. That can be extremely traumatizing for a and so, really healing that inner child and working with that inner child. What did this little 5-year-old need to hear from you, Jimmy? And then, dialoguing with them. What does this 5-year-old want to share with you? Giving them a voice, giving them a way to express themselves and to be heard, and, doing a lot of that inner child healing and visualization, because the brain doesn't know the difference between real and imaginary. So when we're visualizing that, our brain doesn't realize that we're not in that 5-year-old mindset. So it's really powerful when you're transforming and basically upgrading your belief systems from when you're 5 years old, say you're 30. That's a huge difference in your beliefs and how you're wired.
Can you speak to maybe some of the more fascinating places that people have gone? Or I don't know if you can talk too much about that, but maybe some of the really interesting things that you've seen in some of the hypno work.
Yes, absolutely. Let me just think of a few. So a few great examples. I want to think of some we want to stick with anxiety, because I could talk about skin issues with hypnotherapy, so many different things.
Just anything that's kind of blown your mind, maybe in the middle of session, where you're wow, I didn't see this going there, or wow, this is why I'm doing the work.
Yes, Ooh, great one. I have a great answer to this one. So one of my clients was really struggling with losing weight and moving forward with her fitness goals. And so, she was doing all the things, was even hiring mindset coaches and therapists to, what is causing me to lack discipline, to self-sabotage, to eat ice cream when I know I want to be eating something healthier that's going to nourish my body. Maybe ice cream isn't going to nourish their body or help them with their fitness goals. So we went back to a scene where my client got in a really bad accident, and because of that she was in a coma and she couldn't speak and she was completely blind. In this scene, when she was in a coma, she couldn't communicate, and the only way that she was able to soothe and comfort herself was through food. So she was still going from this unconscious place of eating food to self-soothe, when she didn't realize that, I can self-soothe in other ways. And that's she was frozen in that time period. I think she was 16 when she was, experiencing that, when she was in that coma. And so that was extraordinarily powerful for me to witness that.
Wow.
Like, wow. And she was not completely aware of that was connected at all.
And then did you see her behavior change after that?
Yes.
Or how did that?
Yes. She lost 15 pounds,
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It was extremely powerful to witness, and she wasn't self-sabotaging anymore, and she was able to really completely shift her eating habits in her life.
That's great.
Yeah.
One of the things I feel like you hear about that hypnotherapy really helps is in, losing weight or quitting smoking. I feel like that's kind of advertised or, put out there a lot.
Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. And and just because you also wanted another story, I've also helped clients through smoking. And one client really came to mind. Was that okay if I share that too?
Yeah, please.
Oh, please, because I like nicotine.
Well, this client was typically coming in for cannabis addiction. He was smoking weed 5 to 10 times a day. It was really impacting his work life, his friendships, just how he was able to show up. Especially, he wanted to be more emotionally available. He wanted to attract a partner, and that was really hard when he wasn't emotionally connected or emotionally available to himself, because he was smoking so much weed to suppress a lot of anger. And so we went back to the root cause using hypnotherapy. And what came up was, his father really invalidated a lot of anger in his anger. And because his dad was very angry, he made an imprint in his mind that anger isn't safe to express. And so he was really numbing that frustration that he was feeling in anger in his day-to-day life with weed, because anger isn't safe to express. And so it was very, very difficult for him, in his day-to-day life, because, anger is a primal emotion. There's nothing wrong with you if you're angry. It's showing you that you've been mistreated, or, when a mama bear has her child, right? And someone comes near it, you bet she's going to be angry, and you bet she's going to come at you, right? And so us humans have the same primal instincts. Anger, if you come too close, this is my bubble, please step away. You feel that anger. And so, for him not being able to express that anger, he had to numb it with weed, because it was just it was too uncomfortable. And so when we aren't able to express the full range of emotions, anger, fear, sadness, guilt, any emotion that we have, it just becomes stored in our body. And then we have to externally numb with substances, sex, electronics, workaholism, so many different avenues, because it's too big and we don't have the tools to cope with those sensations, especially if we don't feel safe to do that. And especially, he was so scared because he didn't want to be like his dad, who was frequently angry.
I feel that anger is how my anxiety used to come out, until I started my therapy journey and started exploring new ways to change my brain. And anger, that's a pretty powerful one. It can be dangerous. So that's really cool that he was able to figure out where it came from and see some changes, hopefully pretty quickly.
Yeah, he was able to quit weed after he was doing it for 4 years. And so I was just so freaking proud of my client for that. Because
That's awesome.
Yeah, with any addiction, it's challenging, or with anything, any mental health struggle, it can be challenging to go through that. And so, yeah, it was beautiful to witness that letting go of that wasn't serving him, and that's beautiful that you are able to, really rewire your brain and work through your anger and seeing that underlying emotion was anxiety.
Yeah, I'm really glad that I found your podcast because my wife, she frequently experiences anxiety. And there was one point where we had a lot of life going on, and I experienced my first panic attack. I was like checking my heart rate, it was getting up to like 186. I was like, call the ambulance. I think I'm having a heart attack. She goes, no, you're experiencing a panic attack. And she was able to help me and walk me through it. But ever since then, she's like, okay, I'm starting to panic. I was like, okay, cool. What do we need to do to change it? Let's get you out of this environment. Let's change things and get your brain refocused. So it really helped me to be able to identify with her what she was dealing with instead of just being like, get over it, stop feeling anxious. So I got that more of a clear understanding of what it meant to experience that anxiety.
That's beautiful. I'm so glad that you're able to support your wife in that way and really support her and really validate, that's hard. Let's get you out of this state, because a huge thing is people just don't feel heard. And especially because anxiety is so misunderstood. It's so not a logical thing, right? It's not a choice. Like it's so not a choice. And so bringing that empathy and compassion to people is just so healing.
Awesome. So maybe now that we've delved into your brain spotting and your hypnotherapy, why don't we talk a little bit about your somatic coaching?
Yes, amazing. So brain spotting kind of falls into that, but I also do something called somatic parts work. So basically, somatic parts work is we all have different parts of ourselves that feel rejected or unloved. And so it comes out in different parts of self sabotage. Anxiety can be one, feeling like, yeah, nicotine addiction. We all have different parts of ourselves that don't feel safe. So our brain, our unconscious mind comes up with these parts to protect ourselves from hurt or pain. And so like for example, so I first have them identify, what it is that we want to work on. Let's just say, emotional eating, because that's one, emotional eating. So say we work on this emotional eating. Okay, when you're thinking of this emotional eating, I hear that you're so frustrated with yourself that you're emotionally eating and you feel like you have no control and you just see a whole bin of cookies and you just, you feel out of control and you just want to eat all of them when you're upset, and really seeing, okay, what are the emotions there? Okay, where am I feeling this in my body? So whatever feeling they're feeling attached to the emotional eating. Maybe it's I'm feeling fear, I'm feeling out of control, I'm feeling sad when I'm noticing I'm emotionally eating. Okay, where do you feel that in your body? Feel that in my shoulders. I feel that like a knot in my stomach. Feel that, heaviness in my shoulders. I feel a lot of tightness in my chest, you know, totally with that. Okay, what sensations can you notice here? I'm noticing my chest is tightening. I'm noticing almost like this sensation of warmth. I'm feeling my body is really warm. I'm feeling like I'm sweating, and going into those sensations. And then, what are the emotions and feelings there? Sadness, fear, guilt, shame. Okay, going a deeper level. How old does this part think that you are? And when they're in an unconscious state, they're like, wow, I feel like I'm 5 years old. Like my dad was an alcoholic. And, I remember when he was, angry with my mom and he was drunk. I remember I would go to the cookies. Wow. And now you can see where this is also stemming from. And and we're not necessarily even going to a scene or image or memory, but typically that comes up when we're exploring that. And then I do inner child work. I also, and in that somatic parts work session, I'm imagining and helping them, taking them out of that time and place when you were 4, when your dad was yelling at your mom when he was drunk and he was angry and you were self soothing, with cookies. Let's bring this 4-year-old self. Let's imagine we're bringing this 4-year-old self with you in the present day now. Where would they like to go? They'd like to go with me to build a sand castle at the beach. Okay, and really, what is this? As we're at the beach on the sand castle, building the sand castle with your 4-year-old self, Jessica, what is it that this 4-year-old wants to share with you? she says, oh, I'm scared, I'm so happy you're with me, yada, yada. And then, after that, what did she need to hear back then? I needed to hear that I'm loved, that I'm safe, yada, 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 whatever that might be. And then really processing those emotions, because those emotions from when you're 4 can get stuck in your body and can show up as neck pain, tension, and show up in these other ways. And so, where is this feeling now? It's still in my stomach. Okay. So I give clients 2 options, either doing breath work or to release those emotions and process those emotions, or I do something called pendulation. So basically, especially if you feel very easily overwhelmed by emotions, we can then, okay, I'm feeling this a lot in my stomach. What's a safe part in your body? And putting attention on that part of your body that feels safe, and just building your capacity and going back and forth. And then assigning a new role to this part of you that was scared, that came up with the emotional eating. Okay, let's really reframe this role that this emotional eating was trying to protect you from feeling pain and fear when your dad was yelling at your mom. Okay, yeah. And so, what new role would they like to take on? They'd like to take on a nurturer, a praiser, someone. This role is praising me, making me feel better, and soothing me from my pain. So really reframing those unconscious roles. So that's really how somatic parts work works. I know I just, talked for like a hot minute, so I appreciate you listening and letting me ramble on.
No, it's all so
So,
interesting.
so you first take them down with hypno, is that right? And then you kind of find the somatic parts. Is that what you were saying? And then once you hit those parts, then you almost do a breath works into them?
Yes, pretty much. Except I don't need to necessarily guide them to be relaxed like we're doing in the hypnotherapy. For them, we're really starting with that activation. So I'm feeling shame and guilt from this overeating. And then I go with that feeling and sensation and ask them more questions. And I'm really helping them identify what is the role, function, purpose, and intention for this emotional eating. And then they can go into scenes and things like that, and then inner child work, and then helping them release with breath work or finding another safe space in their body.
Can you describe I know what breathworks is, and I absolutely love it. But can you describe maybe breathworks for our audience?
Yes, amazing. So to kind of give a little bit, this is kind of sciencey, I guess. But breath work, when our brains, when we're anxious, we're typically breathing from a very shallow place. Our chest isn't open. It feels tight. We're not taking in deep breaths. So doing that consciously by taking deep breaths in and out and exhaling for longer than you're inhaling, that's going to regulate your nervous system. That's going to bring your body back into balance. That's going to bring you more to a relaxed state and allow you to process emotions and feelings and sensations. And it's really helpful to help us, relax and be in that grounded state.
And you have them almost breathe directly into that part.
Yes, you got it. Exactly.
Wow.
It's interesting because I do a lot of these things through meditation, but also, there's I wish I could learn that extra somatic part, to really focus in on healing those certain parts of us. Yeah. Valerie, you do a really great job of explaining all of this.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
So since this is a men's mental health podcast, can I ask what percentage of your clients are male versus female? And do you find that it's more difficult to work with, or because maybe they're more hesitant to open up or something like that?
Great question. So my clientele, it's about 70% women and then 30% men. So I actually find that men, like a lot of common themes is I feel like men are much more logical. Men can also get a lot in their heads as well, but I feel like men, they will, if I give my male clients an action plan, they will do it typically, and so they're very like, I'm going to do it. I'm very, I find that really I help build that connection and safety, before going into that deeper work. So I don't find that male clients are harder to open up to me. That's just been
That's good.
So, yeah.
Yeah, cool. I'm always curious about what the demographic is and what it's like, the differences working with males versus females. because, obviously we care about all mental health, but specifically we're just trying to help end the stigma of, men not talking about their feelings.
Yes, and that's such a beautiful mission because a lot of my male clients have a level of shame around their feelings, their anxiety, their emotions, because men are so shamed, right? I'm a woman, but
Mm-hmm.
from my experience working with men, they're so shamed. My dad told me, this is an example. Oh, my dad told me that big boys don't cry. Crying is weak. You don't want to be like a little girl or a hissy or just any of these. So much like negative programming when there's literally been research on like male infants compared to female infants, and male infants actually cry more than women.
Interesting.
And yet we're probably more invalidated, like you're saying, because of the, you hurt yourself, suck it up, you're fine.
Yeah.
Yep.
Don't cry.
Yeah, we're taught not to experience those
Yeah.
emotions. And then we get to, the age of 18 or 20 and get into a relationship for the first time and then really feel these emotions, and we have no idea what to do with them.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And with emotions, and this is also something I'm feeling called to share, is with emotions, a lot of the time we can feel an emotion in our body and we come up with a story of why we're feeling that way, and it keeps the emotion stuck in our body. So just that's why meditation and mindfulness practices sitting with your body is so helpful, because we can observe those thoughts like cars driving by or clouds, moving, and it's really helpful to get us unstuck. A lot of people are like, I'm stuck. I've been feeling chronically anxious all week thinking of my presentation for my work. And it's because they're not allowing themselves to sit in that discomfort, especially with this programming of, you shouldn't feel that way. Don't be dramatic. You're too sensitive. Suck it up. Boys don't cry. And it keeps that emotion stuck in the body. And so really just de-shaming that, hey, these emotions are coming up and it's okay. Just witnessing those emotions and trying, and if your mind comes up with a story, that's okay. Refocusing on your sensations and emotions in your body, and that's what really helps us, move them through our body instead of staying stuck.
It's really difficult for men to get there in the first place when we haven't been taught. I've been doing this work for a while and been in therapy myself for a while, and so sometimes I have to remind myself, that a lot of people have never been in touch with their emotions, couldn't even describe maybe what they're feeling or why they're feeling it, and so sometimes when I'm able to take a step back and really work with somebody on feeling that for the first time, it can be really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting.
Mm.
So I guess, we're getting kind of close to the end here. The information you've given us today has been fantastic. What advice would you give to somebody who may be a little hesitant about maybe looking into hypnotherapy or going to talk with somebody about somatic coaching, where like, oh, I don't really want to go into those feelings?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's just, I want you to know that it's so normal to feel that way. Anytime that we are faced with maybe something different, it can feel scary, right? Any life changes that you're going through, it can feel very scary. And when you try something different, your mind tries to fill in the gaps there's so much uncertainty trying to fill in the gaps. Oh, that's really weird. That's woo, that's whatever. But I'm in the sense of, I like to try everything. And it's just like with food, right? You didn't know that your favorite cheese was going to be your favorite cheese until you tried it out. So it's just something to add to your toolbox, and just try it out. And I think it is scary. It can be really scary when you've never felt your feelings ever. And that's why I never start directly with hypnotherapy or like brain spotting. I help build their capacity, especially a lot of my clientele experiences symptoms of CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So a lot of my clientele are very shut off from their emotions, or especially if you work as a firefighter or like first responder, they're actually taught to disassociate from their emotions because it's part of the training, and a lot of men as well work in that field. So helping them to make that difference and help them feel safe and connect to their body to where they can start to label sensations and emotions so that it's easier to get into more deeper forms like hypnotherapy. And I just say, F it, like try it. You know?
Yeah.
Cool. That's amazing. Valerie, I mean, do you have any questions for us while you're here? This isn't just about us asking you questions. If you have questions for us too.
Yeah, this is my question. I'll ask both of you. These are, I think these are more like emotional questions.
Ooh, okay.
If you were to tell your 5-year-old self anything, what would they need to hear?
You want to go first, Guy?
Yeah, I guess so. Man, if I could tell my 5-year-old self something, it would probably be that it's gonna be okay, and that things someday will make sense. Because I can say that I wouldn't be who I am without the journey I've been on, so I don't wish any of it would go away. I wish I would know that there was hope in the future.
So I actually, now that we're talking about EMDR earlier, I got to do this when I was doing the EMDR work, and I had a really difficult childhood, and I saw that 5-year-old sitting there crying in tears, and I didn't really have to say a whole lot. I just gave him a big ass hug, and I think I did tell him to like hang in there, buddy. It's gonna turn out all right.
Cool. That's a great question.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking that to us. Well, I think we've got we're getting ready to wrap it up here unless anyone's got any more questions.
I think I'm good.
No, yeah. Cool. Well, Valerie, thank you so much for coming. Where can people find you? What's your handle on all your social media and all that?
Yes, amazing. Thank you so much. So my Instagram, you can find me on Instagram at Heal with Val. So it's HEAL with Val, VAL, all just one word. And then I have my Facebook. You can find me on Facebook. My full name is Valerie. And then my last name is Rubin, RUBIN. And then I have my website. It's valrubin.com, VALRUB as in boy, IN.com. So that's where you can find me. And then I also have my podcast, the Anxiety Recovery Podcast with Valerie Rubin.
Which is awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on Anchor, anywhere where podcast episodes are streaming.
Cool. And we'll put links to all of your stuff on our website, heymanitsokay.com, especially, and we'll put it on all of the descriptions when this episode comes out. But Valerie, thanks for being here. It's been a pleasure. For now, I'm Sky, and it's okay to not be okay.
I'm Ryan. Thank you guys for coming. Comment, subscribe.
Visit us
Appreciate you guys watching.
all of our social media at Hey Man It's Okay, and we'll talk to you next time.